Now let's talk about volume. What defines the peak volume of your stereo? So the general assumption is that if you have more watts, then you will get a louder music and more powerful music out of it. So now let's get into how volume works. So volume is defined by three things, and one of them is the output power of your amplifier, how many watts it has. But it's not going to tell you how loud the music is. You have to factor in the efficiency of your speaker as well. And also, a third factor, you have to factor in the distance you are from your speakers and the size of the room. So if you are moving to a bigger room, then you will need either higher output power or higher speaker efficiency. So you will need more energy to fill the room to have the same perceived volume level. So that's why small speakers work well in a small room, but when you and smaller amplifiers, but when you are moving to bigger and bigger rooms, then the demands for speaker sensitivity and power from the amplifier starts to grow a lot. And when you get to a situation that you have a concert hall or a live concert in the open, then these requirements become really staggering. And that's why a small speaker in a big room, it just disappears. So now let's just check that scenario that you have the same size room, let's say like an average living room, and let's check two different systems. So in one case, let's have a Dynaudio speaker that has a sensitivity of 85 decibel per watt at a meter. And let's compare it to another system that has a Klipsch Cornwall 4 that has a sensitivity of 102 decibel per watt at 1 meter. And let's feed these with different kinds of amplifiers. So this system, the Dynaudio, this will be like a general system that most of us audiophiles have at home, meaning a lower sensitivity speaker and the mid to high power amp. So now if you have a 50 watt amplifier and you add it to these bookshelf speakers, it means that you have a base sensitivity of 85 dB, and with 50 watts you are adding 17 dB extra on top of that. So it means in total the peak possible volume will be 102 dB at 1 meter. So with a 50 watt amp using a conventional speaker, you get 102 dB, 102, right? Now let's look at the situation where you have a low power amplifier, and let's go like really low, just 1 watt output, because now you can hear on YouTube some people talking about 2-3 watt amps and saying that it's like how low power amp. Now let's go like really low, like free power level, 1 watt, maybe let's go even lower than that. So 1 watt amplifier that adds 0 dB to the peak power handling of the speaker. So we also get here 102 dB. So here you go. If you have a 1 watt amplifier, it can provide you the exact same peak volume level as a 50 watt amplifier with a low sensitivity speaker. So now I hope everyone has realized that speaker sensitivity is tremendously important for low power amplifiers, because when you use the right speaker with it, then really there's no difference between what is the peak output volume of a flea power amp or a mid to high power amp. So they can get identical peak volumes. So now let's look a little bit more into it. So because this situation is not equal, so you are not getting the same quality from these two scenarios. You are getting the identical peak volume, but what goes on and how do they behave once you start cranking them up above 80 dB? So how do they react to it? So when you have a smaller speaker, a low sensitivity speaker, they have a much lower working range, which is a distortion-free working range. And I can say usually for most speakers, how they are rated, their sensitivity rating gives you that peak volume level until which they are comfortable to be driven. So if you have an 85 dB sensitive speakers, it means that you can play music up to 85 dB on it without noticeable distortion. And when you start to push it beyond 85 dB, beyond 1 watt of input power, then you can hear distortion creeping into the sound, and that's what the ear perceives as the music is too loud. So when you listen to music, try out this experiment. Put on some music and start turning the volume control higher and higher. And you will notice that there will come a point when you think, this is too loud. And that for conventional low sensitivity speakers or small size speakers will come quite soon. And then you will think that, wow, it's such a tiny speaker, but it plays really, really loud. Actually, it doesn't play that loud, but there's so much distortion coming in that your ears, that your brain calculates from the distortion that it must be really loud. And the culprit for that is the tweeter. So the dome tweeters, they cannot handle really high outputs. They start to have a really high distortion when pushed higher than a 1 watt input power, and that's what we perceive as high volume. So basically, even though you are connecting a 50 watt amplifier to your speaker, you still can enjoy only 1 watt, because if you push it more than 1 watt output power, then it starts to already affect your hearing, and you will start to have listening fatigue and unpleasant experience. And when we look at the other situation of a high sensitivity speaker that has 102 dB sensitivity, there you have about a 20 dB extra headroom before it starts to do anything nasty. So it means that, just check this out, so for 102 dB it works without distortion, and now we plugged in an amp that outputs only 1 watt, so it means that the entire working range of the amplifier will get translated by your speaker without adding any harsh distortion to the high frequencies. So you will be able to enjoy with your 1 watt amplifier up to about 100 dB volume level. And with your 50 watt amplifier, you will be able to enjoy only 85 dB. So even though you have 50 times more power, you have like 15 dB less headroom for actual music listening compared to a 1 watt amplifier with proper speakers. So actually you see that the tables are getting reversed by how much power you have and what is the music quality you are getting out of it. And by no means I'm pointing out the Dynavector speakers that those are the only ones who go to 85 dB. No, every single loudspeaker that has a lower sensitivity range, and I mean that's virtually like 95% of the commercial audiophile speakers which employ the dome tweeters are in this category, and but they still are comfortable only to play up to their sensitivity, and essentially when you look at it, these dome tweeters that give you the high frequencies are the exact same tweeters and same technology that's used in the smallest bookshelf speakers. And it's not the mid-range and the bass drivers that limit the upper volume experience for music. It's mostly the tweeter, because the tweeter is the one that can handle, I would say that shows volume distortion the most. So when you crank them most, your ear is more sensitive to the distortion that they produce than to the distortion in the bass. Just think about that. Like less than 5% of the auditory cortex is responsible to hear anything below 500 Hertz. The majority of our brain power of the auditory cortex is for mid-range and high frequencies. So that's defined by your tweeter. And the tweeter is not comfy working with anything more than 1 watt of power thrown at it. And when you look at high sensitivity speakers, then it's a very different scenario. And here you see there are these horns, and the horns are producing here the mid-range and the high frequencies, and these horns are fed by compression drivers. Compression drivers are different from dome tweeters or ribbon tweeters in a way that they can be pushed to extreme degree and they still have vanishingly low distortion. And that distortion level is about 10,000 to 100,000 times lower distortion than a cone. Just imagine that. So you are pushing it like 93 dB and higher, and here in this case you have 10,000 times less distortion for the high frequencies. So that results in this scenario that for these speakers, anything above 83 dB and you already hear that it's way too loud and I have to crank the volume down, otherwise you get hearing damage. And for these speakers, the same thing happens around 117 dB. So that's like a live concert volume. And that's because their distortion is so vanishingly low that you really need to ramp it up close to the operating range of the driver, where it will start to show distortion. So I hope this shows you something interesting, and one more thing I would like to add, that here we were thinking, okay, we had this system running with 50 watts of input power. How about I connect a 1000 watt amplifier to it? That will make the situation better, right? It will make it better in a way that a bigger amp that has higher current drive will be able to control your mid-range and your woofer with greater precision. So yes, even the bookshelf speakers will sound more powerful and bigger with a bigger amplifier, but how the tweeter behaves, they are not going to change that at all. And you are still going to have your tweeter distortion. So if you go 1 watt, 50 watt, 500 watt, 2000 watt, your your limiting high frequency distortion will still be at the 1 watt level. So it doesn't matter if you have a 2000 watt amp, it will still play up to about 90 dB max without listening fatigue. And beyond that, you will hear that this is too loud. I have to crank the volume control lower. But when you crank the volume control lower, then you will feel that, okay, I'm losing a lot of the music. So that's why volume control is such a lousy business with regular speakers. But when you have a high efficiency speaker, there the volume control works very different. I'm going to explain it in another video. That's a long subject and deserves its own. So in any case, it's 1 watt that matters. For 1 watt you get the best quality music, and if your speaker can resolve 90 dB out of it, you get 90 dB dynamic range. If your speakers can resolve 100 dB plus from it, then you will get 100 dB dynamic range from it. And then that's it. So kind of talked about this already. So I hope now that this is another reason for you to see it, not to dismiss low power amplifiers. If you have a watt, maybe less than a watt amplifier, if you have sufficiently sensitive and efficient speakers to drive, they can give you clean 100 dB of output volume, and that's all you need, unless you want to blow up your neighbors. For 100 dB you can enjoy a symphony with perfect satisfaction. And please like and subscribe so others can like and subscribe. Bye.